This is China, which is known to be the biggest population country in the history. 2022 is a year that will go down in history as one of the most significant of the entire 21st century for many reasons, but the most important reason for this year to be unique is that, according to Chinese official data, for the very first time in more than 300 years from now, China is not the most populated country. From the previous 60 years, China's population has been decreasing very fast. It's been almost 300 years that China has held the record of the most populated country in the world. In 2022, China's population decreased by around 850,000 people, and it will continue decreasing with every single year for the next several decades and more. This problem will definitely affect the world's economy in the coming decade because due to the huge labor force, China was the world's manufacturing factory where they manufactured almost everything and supplied to the whole world. From the past 60 years, as time passes, China's population is decreasing and India's population is increasing continuously with every single year. Now today, as of April 2023, India emerged to be the most populated country, leaving China behind. At this time, India's population has increased to 1.428 billion and China's population has decreased to 1.425 billion. So, what's the reason why China has faced the fastest population decline? Due to the reduced population, how's China's economy collapsing? Moreover, due to the reduced population, why Chinese military power is getting weaker and how it will affect the economic and geopolitical crisis of the whole world. Today in this video of real-life tale, we will explain to you the answers to all these questions in detail. Population of India is increasing so fast that it will continue holding the maximum population title for the rest of the 21st century. Because China's population is shrinking so fast that it will never cross the Indian population. 40 years from now, by 2060, India's population will have increased to approximately 1.7 billion people. For the very first time, the real population decline of China started in 2022, which further accelerated in 2023. It's just the beginning of a decade-long process when the Chinese population will rapidly decline. The Chinese population will historically decrease by 100 to 200 million people at the end of year 2050. At the end of 21st century, in 2100, China's population may decline from 1.4 billion to 800 million only. This is the fastest population decline of any country in history. By that point, the Chinese population may only be around half the size of India's population at the end of the century, that is projected to be 1.5 billion. Today, as of 2023, the population of China is 18% of the world's population. China holds this record of the biggest population from centuries dated back to the year 1700. It means that every one of 5 humans on the planet have consistently found themselves in China. This is a fact that has been given by every Chinese government for hundreds of years, and they have taken several steps to control the overpopulation. Today in 2023, if we add up the populations of Europe, Australia and North America, still their combined total population is less than the population of China. According to the calculation of the United Nations, the population of China will be decreased to as few as only 800 million in the year 2100. There might be a new world very soon in the year 2200 when the Chinese population will only account for less than 8% of the worldwide human population, which is now at 18%. This is the fact that will significantly weaken China's population balance, which will affect the Chinese economy and ultimately the worldwide geopolitical economy, which was never acknowledged by this world. Today, China is rapidly heading towards population decline, but the population of China's primary geopolitical rival, the United States, is growing continuously. The United Nations population projections estimated that by the end of 21st century, America's population will probably increase from the present to somewhere around 400 million, which by then will only be around half of China's 800 million. This will be a completely different reality than the one we have today, where China and America's populations are totally away from each other. Today, the population of China is 5 times the population of America, so that's why China has significant advantage of manpower fit for military services and industry workers for manufacturing factory jobs. But at the end of 21st century, this massive demographic advantage will be no more, which China is enjoying over the United States today. But still, if we add up all military services and allies of America like NATO, Japan, South Korea and Taiwan, their combined total population is approximately 1 billion people, which is 70% of today's China population as of 2023. Countries in the American alliance network like Japan, South Korea and Italy are also facing population decline as well. In the event of the conflict between China and every single one of these countries today, China still holds the only advantage of available maximum manpower. If we do research on other countries like the United States, Canada, France and Australia, Their population is continuously growing, and it is expected that it will keep growing until the year 2050. At that time, this American alliance will be very strong, due to which we will see many strategic changes considering the foreign policies and geopolitical events of China and America, especially the military invasion of Taiwan by the alliance of United States, because at that time Chinese demographic and military strength will be very weak, and that will lead to the end of political control of China on Taiwan. If China really wants to invade Taiwan, then this year 2023 is the best opportunity for them to do so, because the invasion will be almost impossible after the 2030s. The invasion of Taiwan will most likely happen within these 8 years, or it will never happen at all. The most important question is, how did China even get into this situation of fastest declining population? And it was that country which remains to be the most populated country from centuries dated nearly year 1700. You will also get to know in the last minutes of this video how Chinese women are rapidly decreasing compared to the Chinese men. China has continuously been the home of the world's largest population, but for a period of 4 decades from 1911 to 1948, China faced many internal and external crises, due to which their population kept on growing rapidly and there was no industrial growth. In comparison to this, at that time, Europe and America's industry was developing at a much higher rate. In 1911, a revolution toppled the centuries-old Qin dynasty, due to which the whole China faced the huge chaos in the country, and the ethically separated regions of Qin dynasty like Mongolia and Tibet declared their independence, while other warlords created their own governments in their separate regions. In all this situation, the Republic of China failed to maintain its control and authority. At that time, the Chinese Communist Party emerged under the leadership of Mao Zedong and started fighting decades-long civil war with the Republic of Chinese government in 1927. Taking advantage of all this chaos due to the civil war in China, Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, which is a state of China. After that, in 1937, Japan launched the full-scale invasion and conquest of whole China that continued until 1945. This all ends up with the death of 20 million people. During this invasion, the Republic of Chinese government and Communist Party signed an agreement to end their civil war and get united to fight with the Japanese. But as this Japanese war concluded in 1945, civil war between the Republic of Chinese government and Communist Party started again, which continued for another 4 years until 1949. This all civil war ended up with the win of Communist Party, and the Republic of China's government retreated to the island of Taiwan. But there was no peace agreement signed between them, so the civil war between them continues on paper to this day, but the Communist Party still claims the island of Taiwan as the rogue province of China. The People's Republic of China invaded Tibet in 1950 and then annexed it in 1951. Then China emerged on map with its present shape after 40 years of continuous wars and conflicts. The 40 years of war almost cost the death of 30 million people, and this all understandably cut down China's ability to grow its population base. But after 1951, China became unified under the single strongly centralized government of the Chinese Communist Party, due to which China emerged from all of that chaos of civil war. So, a long era of relative peace and stability started. After that, civil war with Taiwan was converted to Cold War. So, during the time of this general peace and stability, people were much more hopeful about their future and they started producing children. So, a baby boom took off in China following the conclusion of the Civil War in 1949, similar to the baby booms that also happened after the war in Europe and North America. In the 25 years from 1950 to 1975, the Chinese population increased by 66%, which means there was an increase of 364 million people. In between this period from 1959 to 1961, China faced a great famine which caused the death of 15 to 55 million people in the country. By 1970, the average Chinese woman was having 6.1 children each, at the same time when European and American women were only having an average of 2.3. So, the Chinese Communist Party leadership became panicked by this massive overpopulation, considering the future of the country. Thus, in 1973, in order to combat this overpopulation, the Chinese Communist Party introduced the campaign of producing less children. Legal marriage age was increased to 23 years for women and 25 years for men. According to the child policy, one couple can only produce 2 children with a compulsory 3-year waiting period between their births. This policy was implemented very strongly and proved to be very successful. Within 10 years, that after 1980, the average Chinese woman was having 2.7 children, which was decreased from 6.1 children, and the required average rate by the government was 2.1 children. So, in 1980 again, China implemented another one-child policy, according to which one couple can only produce only 1 child. This policy was relaxed to 2 children but only for those couples whose firstborn child was a girl. Due to the one-child policy, female child abortion cases increased in China and women decreased by 66% in comparison to the men. China has 35 million more male population than the female population. There are almost 17 million young men in China who will simply never be able to find a woman to marry and start a family. They have to search abroad to marry the girls. Due to the one-child policy, the average child birth rate by a Chinese woman dropped to 1.3 children in 2020, which was 2.7 in 1980. Now this comes out to be extremely low than the required average for the stable population that was 2.7 children. Now the Chinese Communist Party leadership has begun to recognize that while solving the overpopulation problem, the country is now heading towards the problem of depopulation. So, the one-child policy was officially ended and allowed every couple to have 2 children. Then after recognizing the severity of the problem of fewer females in the country, the child policy was relaxed to 3 children per family in 2021. But this policy was too late for the country, as due to this all mess China has a maximum old age population of 45 to 60 years old. In the concept of demographics, the most beneficial age for the economics of the country is 15 to 64 years old people who play the major role in the country. People aged less than 15 years and greater than 60 years are usually a burden on the country's economy. In 2016, China was having a maximum population of this beneficial age of 15 to 60 years, and in 2011 China was having a maximum population of prime age that is 25 to 64 years old, due to which China's economy was booming. Now the percentage of the population over the age of 64 years has been steadily increasing every single year since 2016. So, China's population is declining in overall terms and the remaining population is of old age, so the country is heading towards the less young population. After 2016, China has faced an ever-increasing shortage of workers with every passing year as more and more people are getting older. China has to attract the significant immigrants of workers from abroad to work in replacement of the maximum retired people. Due to this, the cost of the labor is increasing and the manufactured products at the factory are being sold at higher rates in the international market that became less competitive and inflationary. Germany, United States, France, Italy and United Kingdoms have largely solved their own declining birth rate problems by encouraging millions of young immigrants from abroad to relocate to their countries to work in replacement of the retired people, and even countries that are less known for immigrations like Russia and South Korea, all have significant ratios of immigrants than China has. China is heading towards a smaller and older population, which is affecting the Chinese economy badly. After the 1980s, China was called the world's factory because at that time they were having maximum young age and skilled labor. This was the time period in which China's global competitiveness as a manufacturing hub was unmatched anywhere in the world because of its massive and cheap labor force, but China's birth rate also crashed during this time period, and so by 2011 Chinese labor force began declining as an overall percentage of the population in 2016. As China's old age population continues to increase and the young age population continues to shrink, Chinese manufacturing continues declining in competitiveness due to less and more costly labor force. This created inflationary pressure on companies in countries that rely on Chinese manufacturing, so the manufacturing hub started shifting to India and Mexico, where there is a big amount of young labor. In 2030, Chinese people will become 5 years older than American people, and in 2033 China's people with age greater than 64 years will finally begin exceeding that of America's people. So, the growth rate of China's GDP will see a decline than America's growth rate in the years between 2031 to 2035, and then it will never be able to catch up again. As China's population is heading towards the older age, China's available manpower fit for military services will continue declining as well. This effect will not be seen immediately, but it will be more gradual after the 2030s, so the China's will remain at the position of second largest economy for the next 2 decades at least. Tell me in the comments section below which country can replace the Chinese second largest economy. China began to finish the civil war by finally establishing its political control over the island of Taiwan. China knows that its strength will be declining relative to its rivals in the near future, so it doesn't want to spend its more power upon this civil war. China is now following an aggressive foreign policy similar to what Russia was following in 1991. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia has also faced an aging and declining population problem. Chinese likely to oppose an invasion attempt on Taiwan. They never announced the use of force on Taiwan, as Chinese President Xi Jinping himself publicly stated during October 2022 twice that Taiwan is China's Taiwan. Resolving the Taiwan issue is a matter for the Chinese. a matter that must be resolved by the Chinese. We will continue for peaceful reunification, but we will never promise to announce the use of force, and we will reserve this option. China has high chances of success as he try an attempt of invasion on Taiwan between 2027 to 2031, because in 2027 People Liberation Army will experience its 100th anniversary of founding and finish its scheduled modernization and reforms and will have transformed into a fully modern military force. In order to be successful, the invasion attempt should be carried out as early as possible in order to deny any other foreign interference from America and Japan. Xi Jinping's fourth term will start in 2027 and will end in 2031. After that, the president will be 78 years old, which is the average Chinese age. In the early 2030s, China's population will be rapidly declining and aging, and the Chinese economy will be growing slower than America. This is the problem that will continue for the rest of 21st century, so at that time the invasion of Taiwan will be more difficult to be successful. If you found this video good and knowledgeable, kindly like the video and subscribe to the channel because it takes a lot of time and energy to make these kinds of videos. We'll meet you in the next video. Bye bye.